Hi, I'm Maren and welcome back to my channel, Maren Makes It. If you're new here, then welcome, and if you are a returning viewer, then welcome back. This week, as you can probably tell from the title and the thumbnail, we need to talk about the Santa Fe National Forest. I really thought I would make a video about this place, kind of highlighting the cool hikes to do here, and I'm still planning to do that, but first, I had to make a different video based on things that are happening there right now. So currently there's 3 massive wildfires raging in northern New Mexico. In my video last week, I talked about the road trip that I did from Santa Fe to Denver, and along that very stretch of road is actually where one of the really large fires in northern New Mexico is right now. This is actually the second biggest fire as of the recording of this video that has ever happened in the history of the state of New Mexico, and this is just one of 3 massive fires that are in the Santa Fe area right now. I'll put a map in here. I tried to make this video earlier in the week, but honestly, I couldn't really keep it together.
It's breaking my heart to see the level of devastation that's occurring.
But I really still wanted to make a video about this, so today I thought I would film my reaction to my initial reaction about learning about the fires. Reaction videos are like a whole subgenre of YouTube, I feel like, so I thought I would try making one myself. So I'm going to be watching the clips that I filmed earlier this week on my phone, and then I'll be telling you guys my reaction to them.
So I just watched KRQE, which is the New Mexico Morning News, or the New Mexico News channel, and I did not realize the extent of the fires that they're having there, but there are so many fires right now in New Mexico.
So the past few years, New Mexico has been largely spared on the wildfire front, which is kind of incredible if you think about it because it's like really dry there. I used to think this was because they do a lot of controlled burns there. A lot of the land is part of national forest or publicly managed land as opposed to privately owned land, and so I think they can do more with regards to controlled burning than in some other places like California and Colorado, where there's a lot of this problem of the like wilderness urban interface is what they call it, where it's like kind of the cities are bleeding into the wilderness, but then it's like if it's people's private property, you can't like so easily do controlled burns on it, or if you're really close to people's private property, I guess. I'm not an expert in this by any means, but I have been reading a lot about this over the past few years. Really what sparked my interest in learning more about wildfires was August 2020. There was a fire in the Santa Fe National Forest in August 2020. It was called the Rio en Medio fire. I think the most scary part is probably that the Rio en Medio fire ended up burning about 5,000 acres. And the fire that I'm talking about today, the biggest one, of 3 by the way, is 270,000 acres as of the filming of this video. So it's like over 50 times bigger. Like, that's enormous. That's comparable to some of the really large fires that they've had in California. It's the second largest fire in the history of the state of New Mexico ever. Unfortunately, I can't show pictures of the current fires because I'm not there, so I'm not taking any. And you can't show pictures of the news without getting a copyright strike on YouTube. At least that's what I think, based on the rules. I was trying to read about this, but it's honestly kind of confusing, so I didn't want to risk that. So I'm going to put in a picture here that my friend sent me from Santa Fe. This was taken on April 21st, so it was about 2 weeks into the fire at this point, and obviously it's been quite a few weeks since then and the fire has gotten way bigger, but just so that you have a little bit of an idea of what it looks like, all the other pictures of wildfires that I'll show in this video are going to be ones that I took myself in the Santa Fe National Forest of the Rio en Medio fire. My sister and I were actually hiking in the Santa Fe National Forest the day that fire started. And I remember calling my friend and saying, hey, we don't have enough data to figure this out. Can you look up if they're doing prescribed burns right now in the area that we're in? Because we see clouds of smoke coming up against the sky. And she looked it up and it was like, oh, there's nothing in the news yet. Like, there wasn't even a news story yet at that time. I was trying to reassure my sister to say that like, oh, they do prescribed burns here. Like, it's probably that. Although usually if it's a prescribed burn, you can find information on that. Like, it will say, oh, on this to this date, like, you will see smoke in the northeastern portion of the sky. Because those are planned burns that are supposed to help prevent wildfires. Anyway, so the Rio de Medio fire, I kind of watched it grow, like literally from the beginning and then over the course of several weeks after. It's truly difficult to comprehend how quickly the air fills with smoke and how fast these fires can spread. These pictures were each taken 3 days apart, so it's the day that the fire started and then 3 days after, and you can see just how quickly this entire valley filled in with smoke. You can't even see beyond the first line of mountains anymore. I also have a few clips here of when my friend and I were hiking after the fire, when it was safe to go back into the national forest. You can see it's still smoldering. At this point, it was safe to go back in the forest because it's under containment. This is something I didn't really understand until I moved out west, like what that means. Like, how can a fire be still burning but also be contained? And so it means that they've done something like around the perimeter of it, basically, to prevent it from spreading. So in this case, I know a lot of what they're doing was like digging ditches. Sometimes I know it's like a fire retardant. Sometimes a road helps prevent the fire from jumping like a certain distance. I also know that they were using the water sprayers that help to make snow in Ski Santa Fe were being used as like sprinkler systems, essentially, to help like not have the fire come that way.
It breaks my heart because New Mexico, first of all, is one of the poorest states, and it's really difficult to see these people be evacuated when you know that they don't have the resources. It feels a little bit different than watching, people in California maybe get evacuated.
So this is actually true. New Mexico is the fourth or the fifth poorest state in the country. So there really is something to be said here about what I was saying about people here not really having the resources to relocate or, get a hotel or something. The people, as far as I can tell, are being evacuated to shelters, but it's really hard in these communities. It's a lot of rural communities where people they don't even necessarily have high-speed internet at their house, like let alone other resources. I was also watching a news report talking about how most of the people in these areas don't have homeowners insurance. So I know that's a big thing with these fires, is having insurance for that, to be able to rebuild your home. And it's like, where are these people going to go? Even if the fires eventually subside, like what are they supposed to do? Where are they supposed to go?
And then on top of that, just from me personally, the Santa Fe National Forest and surrounding outdoor areas were my haven during the pandemic. When I lost my job, I would literally go out there every day. When I think about where home feels like, it's the outdoors there more than anywhere else right now.
So this kind of begs an interesting question that I've been wondering about all week, is like, I really do feel like what I said in that clip, that home right now feels like it is like there in the, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I could talk about this. So it really does feel like home, and it kind of begged the question to me all week that I've been kind of pondering on, is like, what makes something a home? When you think of like, my home is here, like, do you think of like your house, like the four walls of your house? But like, if you transplanted that house to a different place, like, would that still feel like home to you? Do you think it's about the people that are there? For example, I know the town that I grew up in. Well, I don't know a lot of people who still live in that town, and I don't have a house or family still living in that town. So it's like, does that still feel like home to me? Like, not really. But it's like, when does that point happen? Is it about the people? Is it about your home? Is it about the city itself that feels like home? Is home the address that you give for billing? Is home like the address that you have for shipping things? Is home a city where you don't need a GPS to drive around? Like, I really want to know, like, what is your guys' definition of home? Like, if somebody says, like, where's your home? What would you say to that? Is it the city you're from? Is it the city you're living in? Like, I really am very curious to hear what you guys think. So I've kind of decided that being home is more about a feeling that you get in a certain situation than anything else. And I think a big part of that feeling is like just being in your comfort zone and feeling like you know what to expect in that space. But I think there's also something else to it, because there's situations that can be bad that feel like they're in your comfort zone because you're used to that. Like, for example, having, a boss that really doesn't treat you well, or a job that doesn't treat you well. It's sort of like normalized that bad treatment of you and them not respecting you. And then it feels like, well, this is my comfort zone because I know how they're going to act, and I know that they're going to treat me with disrespect, and so it feels like the norm, like you're comfortable in that because you understand it, if that makes sense. But that doesn't feel like home then. So it's like it has to be like something positive, I think, alongside of being in your comfort zone, and having like that security of knowing what to expect that comes with being in your comfort zone. In the past, I would have said that my like apartment or my city would be my comfort zone, but I don't really feel like that anymore. I think it's more about this feeling that you get when you're in a place where it just feels like you have the safety to be the most authentic version of you and to be fully present in the moment, where you don't have to be thinking about the past or the future. Like those are the moments when I feel like, oh, I'm coming home, or like I feel like I'm home. And I've had this in some really weird situations over the last like half year. From like being in my car definitely feels like home. Driving on the highway, like when I get into the driving zone, like I get that feeling of just like relaxation and relief, which is kind of weird because driving can also be like a really stressful activity.
It's also so weird to think about the fact that like that place, those places, like they won't exist the way that they were anymore. And like obviously nature is constantly changing anyway, because you know there's other forces such as wind and erosion, and obviously just this seasonal change too can make a place look completely different. Even the weather conditions can make a place look completely different. But
I totally agree with everything I just said right here about the weather conditions making a place look completely different. I actually took pictures of some of the same shots in different times during the pandemic, in different seasons, to try and show this. Also just because I didn't have that much going on, and so I would return to some of the same spots over and over again for walking or hiking.
to know that the things like the trees and like the entire landscape is going to be different now, and gonna take probably tens or hundreds of years to recover.
It is really hard to think about this. I mean, I drove through Northern California last summer, through some of the burn scars there, and it was so difficult to look at and to think about how just how long it's going to take for anything to be growing there again, basically, especially if we continue to have such dry conditions. I was watching an interview with somebody on the news who was like a forestry expert person, and they were talking about how they honestly don't know if like forest is ever going to grow in these places again in the Santa Fe National Forest.
You think that you can go back to this place anytime you want, but now it's not going to be like homesickness anymore. It's going to be like nostalgia for these places because they no longer exist, so you couldn't even go there if you wanted to.
I definitely feel this way about other big life changes I've had, where sometimes you feel like a longing for a place. Like when I left college, I would think about like, oh, I wish I could go back to the town that I went to college in, but then I had to remember that like, well, none of my friends are there because they all left too. So it's like you feel like you're homesick for that place, but what you really want is to go back in time and not to go to that place.
It's on those really, really long hikes by myself that I feel like I learned so much about myself, and I was in the best physical shape of my life. And
that's true. I could hike like I would go on like 13 or 14 mile trail runs just for fun, just casually on the weekend. I was in such good shape then, and it like didn't even feel like a big deal. I could just move on with the rest of my day. And now one giant foot injury later, it's much more difficult to ever get back to that kind of shape again, because honestly it just takes a long time. Like it's a lot of hours devoted to training, and I just haven't devoted the time to it.
Also gained such an appreciation of nature that I never had before I lived in New Mexico. Truly, I used to hate hiking. I remember that I was dating somebody once who wanted to go for a hike on their birthday, and I really felt like I had to suck it up because I just, I didn't enjoy it at all. Like it really felt like I have to suck it up to do this on this person's birthday.
That's absolutely 100% a true story that really happened. I really didn't like being outside or like being in the outdoors that much until I moved to New Mexico. I think it's because I associated hiking with like mosquitoes, ticks, like Lyme disease, like humidity, like being super sticky and sweaty all the time. And then also like even in like the whole winter months, you can't really hike when you live in New England anyway, unless maybe like, I don't know, you're snowshoeing, but I don't feel like people like actually did that, at least not where I lived. And then in the fall, like when it's the prettiest there, like I can appreciate the beautiful scenery, and I'll put in some pictures here if you're not from this area. Like it's beautiful there in the fall. The problem is then like when you're hiking in the fall, you have all these leaves on the trails, which makes the trails like harder to follow along with. And then under the leaves, there'll be acorns. And for me, that's like ankle twist city. And as somebody who's had already so many foot issues, I just hated that because the extra like attention to every step, and then you're like sliding and rolling, you're sliding down leaves and like rolling on acorns. It's like marbles basically under leaves. And it was just it just felt like it's more trouble than it's worth then to hike, honestly, at that point.
Then like here I was choosing to hike, and not just hike, but hike by myself, which was a big deal for me too. To get to a point where I felt comfortable doing that and where I was trusting enough in my own skills that I could hike by myself.
Okay, I'm just gonna clarify on that a little bit. So definitely hiking by yourself can be really empowering, but it's also something you want to be cautious about. Like I didn't do it without any planning or like thought put into it. It wasn't like I just like walked into the wilderness by myself. I would always have my location shared with somebody. If I knew it was in an area where I wouldn't have service, I would be very cautious about like, is it worth it to actually go there? Another thing I would do a lot is I would be the fun dog aunt to my friends that had dogs. A lot of people got pandemic puppies, and I got to be the fun person who comes in, takes them for an afternoon, and takes them on a big hiking adventure. So I just became basically like a dog walker, and I would take other people's dogs on adventures with me, which is really the best of both worlds. It's kind of like being an aunt, where it's like, oh, I get to do the fun adventures with my niece or nephew, but I don't have to do, the doctor's appointments, the vet appointments, and like buying them food and like dealing with them when they're having a tantrum. So I got to be the fun dog aunt, and we went on adventures together. But having a dog with you really changes things too. But yeah, I never would have thought before 2020 that I would ever be somebody who would go hiking alone and actually enjoy it. That would have been like unheard of to me. If you would have told me 5 years ago before that I would be doing that, I'd be like, yeah, no. Or I'd be like, oh my gosh, what happened in the world to make the circumstances so that is something I enjoy?
Anyways, if you want to donate to these efforts in New Mexico, I will put some links down below for you. Obviously, there are a lot of places that have experienced fires. I also know that times are hard right now financially for a lot of people, so I totally understand if you can't donate, but if you can, even $1 can help, and those small donations add up and can make a big difference. I'm too upset right now to figure out exactly how I'm gonna make the rest of this video, but I'm gonna put in some pictures of these beautiful places and some of the hikes that I did.
So I did show you a few pictures during this video already, but after thinking about it a little bit more, I decided to split this into 2 videos. So there's this one, and then I'll make another one about the actual hikes that you can do in that area. As I said in that video clip, I will put down below some links for places you can donate, as well as additional links for places you can find information if you just want to read about the fires and kind of hear what's going on as the most updated kind of situation. As of right now, making of this video, it is Thursday afternoon. I'm going to pull up the fire map over here so I can tell you guys the size of the fire currently. So the Hermits Peak fire, which is what it's called, 270,000 acres burned. Currently, they are not telling us anymore the percentage containment, which they were telling us, which they do sometimes have on the map, but currently there's no percentage update. Anyways, I want to wrap up the video for today. I want to leave you guys with some positive notes, which is difficult to do, honestly, after everything that I just talked about. So the first thing I want to say is just that you know, there are things that you can do to help, and that starts with checking out some of the links that I'll leave down below for places you can donate, and also just getting educated, because awareness is the first step in really trying to change anything and to try to solve any problem. If people are not even aware of the problem, then we can't really do anything to help or to help fix it. The second thing I want to say is just that these are the times where you really have to step back and feel grateful for what you do have. It's so easy to get hung up on like negative things and things that feel like a problem, and I'm like right there with you guys. I totally did this morning. I looked at my emails, I felt overwhelmed. I looked at my stack of dishes in the sink, felt overwhelmed. I looked at the fact that I have to move again in the next week, and I was just feeling so overwhelmed and just dreading it. And you know, and then I was annoyed because you have to filter the water at the apartment that I'm staying at right now, and it takes forever to run through that Brita filter. And then I was annoyed because I didn't have as much time to go for a run as I thought I wanted to. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm gonna get a video out this week. Like I was just focusing on all the negatives, when instead, you know, the fact that I have a beautiful place to run and I have clean air to breathe, because there is no fire smoke in the air right now where I am, like that is something to be grateful for, because I know what it feels like when you can't run for weeks because there is so much smoke in the air that it's actually dangerous. I also know what it's like to camp and live out of my car, and how annoying it is to get water then when you have to go walk to like a pump in a campground to get water. And I'm thinking like, here I am being impatient with the water filter. Like it kind of makes you laugh, but you really have to make the active choice to focus on the positive things as opposed to get hung up on the negative things, because our brain will, I think, automatically oftentimes just filter for what feels like a problem. So if there's a takeaway I can give you guys, it's that I want you to notice the things you can be grateful for in your day today. Even if those things are as basic as like, there's a roof over my head, I have a door that locks, I have clean water coming out of the sink faucet. Like, the more we appreciate those things in our day-to-day life, I think the more happiness you in general feel in your day-to-day life. So that is kind of my challenge for you guys. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. I know this video is really different than the videos that I normally post. I'm definitely still trying to figure out like what I want this channel to be. I love traveling, I love talking about different places, so there's definitely going to be more of that in the future. So if that interests you at all, hit the subscribe button, and I appreciate your time. And if you're still watching this video at this point, I think that you should subscribe, because obviously you're not tired of my voice yet. But like I said, I'm also working on a video to highlight some of the fun parts of the Santa Fe National Forest and to show you guys some of my adventures there. I've been sitting on that footage and those pictures forever, so I'm excited to work on that video and share that with you guys. I hope to have that out by next week, but because I'm moving this week, I can't guarantee. It might be the week after that, just because I don't want to feel rushed. Like, I want YouTube to be fun. I don't want this to feel like it has to be another thing that I have to do on my endlessly long to-do list. I'm already balancing 3 jobs and moving this week, so YouTube is like my fun outlet, and I don't want to feel like rushed and a ton of pressure there right now. Anyways, that's just a little bit about the channel and what's coming up next. I hope you guys are having a great day wherever you are watching this today. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, YouTube.